In this video, I want to discuss arguably and potentially the most important part of doing science. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. First of all, please like this video, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel so that I can grow it more so than it has. It's grown quite a bit in the last month, so I want to thank everyone who has subscribed and everyone who has gave me thumbs up and everyone who has taken some of your precious time to view my content. In any case, there was another video that I wanted to shoot today, but one of the most valuable lessons I learned from my graduate advisor at the University of Michigan's Department of Pharmacology was that until you have all of the pieces, in certain instances, you can't move forward. So for the video that I wanted to shoot today, I had more questions, and I couldn't tell that story in its entirety, and I couldn't do that video justice until I have these questions answered. So as I was out on my evening COVID-19 quarantine walk, as per usual, an idea came to me, and I said, well, why don't I just shoot a video about arguably one of the most important, if not the most important part of science, and one of the most valuable tools that a scientist can have. So I'm going to start this video, and I don't intend for this video to go long. I want to make this one short and sweet so that there's very little editing to do and pretty much no pictures to add. And most of my science videos are like that because science videos are very layered, and you want the viewers. I think I have viewers here who are interested in science and who have science backgrounds, and I have people watching who don't have science backgrounds. So in order to make it as digestible and understandable for everyone, there's quite a bit of production that goes into them. In any case, one of the most important tools that a scientist could have, if not the most important tool, is the ability to raise your hand and ask questions. So questions and curiosity. Those are the lifeblood of science. And I'm going to start with a quote here from one of the senior scientists in the in the government regulatory division that I work in right now. When I first got there, this gentleman told me the only stupid question or the only dumb question is that which goes unasked. Very, very profound quote. And it's stayed with me 12 years later. So how did I learn this lesson, and how did I learn this story? Well, first of all, the reason this is important is because, while I want to use this channel to discuss, current science topics and other aspects of science that are in my wheelhouse and outside of my wheelhouse, I want to use this channel to help lay the groundwork and leave a blueprint for those like me and from my background. So in every neighborhood and in every school and at every university, this is not obvious, as I will describe. So where did this whole thing come from? Well, one of the things that I had to learn when I got to the University of Michigan's Department of Pharmacology was to ask questions and to be curious and to do it in front of everybody and to not be ashamed of it and to not be ashamed to ask a dumb question or what someone might think is a dumb question. It's a very powerful thing, and it takes a lot of strength to be able to do that amongst your peers. In my last interview with fellow Johnson C. Smith University alumnus Chandra Harvey, I told her that when I was at Johnson C. Smith University, even though I was an A student, and even though the professors encouraged us to ask questions and to be curious, it didn't take root there. And one of the reasons was because, and I might get myself in trouble for this, but my cohort at that time, the crop of students in that department, who were in the biology classes and who were in the chemistry classes, they just weren't driven in that regard. Not everyone was an A student, and not everyone understood the importance of being scientifically curious. I think folks were just looking at going to medical school, or they were dreaming of going to medical school. As I described in that interview with Chandra, there was a crop that was groomed to do so and who knew which steps to take, and they went ahead and they did it. And then you had this other group over here who talked about it but didn't quite appreciate and understand how to do it. And asking questions is an important part of clinical medicine as well. But as I said in my interview with Chandra, there was one instance where during someone's senior paper presentation, which was a big deal for us because that means we had to think of projects and present them to everyone, our professors and our classmates, and we had to answer questions on the fly, which is a part of science, which is a part of presenting science. So this one day, a classmate was presenting her senior paper, and one of the Thompsons, there were two Dr. Thompsons in our department, and when my classmate concluded her presentation, Dr. Thompson turned around and looked at us and said, "What, you guys don't have any questions?" And so, wanting to be a good student, I raised my hand to ask something, and one of my classmates behind me sucked her teeth at me, probably because she thought I was trying to ingratiate myself with the professors and I was trying to brown nose and those kinds of things. I was just trying to do the right thing, but she sucked her teeth at me, and that didn't encourage me to, ask more questions. I felt kind of ostracized for that, and I felt like maybe the group thought that, I was selling them out in some way, so that when they were presenting, I would ask them questions, and they would get annoyed by that, or I would make them look bad. I think it was also a fear of looking bad, or a fear of being made to look bad in front of everyone else. So, and the other thing before I move on is that for that particular cohort, I think there was an element of us versus them in terms of the professors. So it just wasn't always the most healthy learning environment, and it wasn't always the most healthy environment for learning science. And so, in terms of presenting as a scientist, as a competent and successful scientist, one of the things you have to do is you have to be able to predict the questions. So when you're putting together experiments, or when you're preparing to present to your peers, or at a meeting, or on a job interview amongst your potential peers, you have to think about what you're going to say and what you're going to present, and you also have to predict the questions you're going to get. So when I got to the University of Michigan, I came from a small HBCU in Charlotte, and now I was at this large Big Ten university, an R1, which is what they refer to it at the NIH, because it's a major research university. I was shy and I was unsure of myself. I was an A student back at Johnson C. Smith, which was a small pool, but now I was in this much bigger arena with kids and students who didn't look like me, and I was learning things at a much more at an accelerated pace, and they were much more complex than what I was learning back at Johnson C. Smith University. So I was completely out of my element, and I was shy and scared to ask questions. And as fate would have it, there was another student there in my first year class, the first year PIBS, the program in the biomedical sciences class, from Morehouse. So there was another student from an HBCU there, and this classmate, I'll shout him out, Tigwa. And I credit Tigwa with helping me get through that first semester at the University of Michigan. And in every class and in every seminar, Tigwa raised his hand and asked questions. And he wasn't shy about it, and he wasn't embarrassed about it. He didn't care if he looked bad. He was going to get the information, and he didn't really care. That was the most important thing. Somewhere at Morehouse, or during his whatever science training he had at that point, he had learned that it was okay and it was important to ask questions as a scientist. So he very much made an impression on me, being the other black male in that class and also coming from an HBCU. And I didn't start asking questions right away, but seeing him do it gave me confidence that I could do it too. In the Department of Pharmacology, the students had to present once a year. Once we chose a thesis research lab, we had to present our research. Initially, when you go into a lab, you don't have any of your own data to present. So you might get a paper and then present whatever data you generated within that year. And so we had to do it every year. And that means that, so you can imagine back at Johnson C. Smith, you're in this little department, and you're with students, some who are motivated, some who are not. But now you're at the University of Michigan Department of Pharmacology, and you're with elite students who have had to qualify to get in there, and you're in a department full of world-class and highly talented faculty. So, the students had to learn firsthand to put together quality presentations and to share with the department what they actually did in the lab every day, and to discuss any progress that they've made or that they hadn't made, because some, depending upon the project the student was working on, they either made progress every year or they didn't make progress every year. But they had to be prepared to take questions from their classmates and from the faculty in the audience. And it was very scary at first, but eventually, by the end of my graduate research, I developed a level of comfortability with it. Part of it was because my graduate advisor was taught us how to present in a very, very stringent way. We would spend hours upon hours upon hours just going over our presentations, making sure everything we said was clean, and making sure the right conclusions were made, making sure all the graphs looked correct, making sure all the Western blots and all the figures and all the techniques were explained the right way. My graduate advisor was a stickler for details. And the way we would do it is we'd go into the room and he'd let us go through ourselves, and he'd sit there and he'd write things down, and he'd say, all right, go back to the beginning, and we'd go back slide by slide by slide by slide. It was like boot camp. It was rough, but it made us much stronger and much more confident on the back end. So, and so we had to learn how to ask questions, and we had to learn how to anticipate questions, and we had to learn how to take questions. And so questions are a fundamental part of science. And, again, there are a lot of efforts out there to get young people involved in the sciences and interested in the sciences, and that's important. But as they get older, we have to somewhere train them and get them thinking and understanding that at the end of the day, it's about asking questions. That's what experiments are, and that's how we gain our new knowledge. That's where all of our new drugs come from. That's where all of our new medical techniques come from. That's where our cell phones and the rocket ships Elon Musk's his company is working on. All these things, the James T. Webb telescope, all these things come from asking questions and being curious. And so if you're doing science, and if you want to do science and you're not curious and you're not asking questions, then you're doing it wrong. So there's nothing wrong with asking questions. And if you're in a group who is shaming you for asking questions and being curious, genuinely curious, not to make someone look bad, but because you want to know, then you should perhaps find a new group, find new peers, find a new cohort to learn with. So I just wanted to say that this was all unscripted. I talk about that part of my journey, learning to be curious and ask questions and not being afraid to look bad in front of everyone else. I wrote a blog post about the challenges of earning my STEM degree or pursuing my STEM degree as a minority. I wrote that up in a blog post. I'm going to leave that in the description box below. And I think that's all I want to say. Asking questions, whichever part of science you're in, whether it's academia or private industry or in the public sector, in the government, or if you're a part of some sort of nonprofit or some think tank, asking questions is critical as a scientist. So that's all I wanted to say. Let me know if you have any questions or comments in the comments section below. Please like this video, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.